It's another huge victory, my friends, for the Trump administration. Another 300,000 non-citizens, those who hopped across the border, those who do not have papers, those who are criminals by default for breaking the law by breaking into this country, similar to breaking into your house. Well, they are now going home after years and years of attempts to stop them and multiple corrupt judges and courthouses doing their best to try and halt the Trump administration from removing 300,000 Venezuelans, among other groups. It seems like the Supreme Court is finally taking matters into their own hands and telling the rest of the nonsense courts to shut the hell up and get out the way. This is from the Associated Press, a left-wing news rag. This is by Mark Sherman. He writes, Supreme Court lets Trump strips protections from more than 300,000 Venezuelan migrants. Not migrants, illegal MFN aliens. The Supreme Court on Friday allowed President Donald Trump's administration to strip legal protections for more than 300,000 Venezuelan migrants. Aliens. The justices issued an emergency order, which will last as long as the court case continues, putting on hold a lower court ruling by U.S. District Judge Edward Chen, who is an idiot, and he's from San Francisco, thus verifying the idiocy and liberal corruption that found the administration had wrongly ended temporary protected status for the Venezuelans, basically flaunting the rule of law. The judge wanted to play new president. But naturally, the three leftist judges dissented in San Francisco. Trump's Republican administration has moved to withdraw various protections that have allowed these illegals, immigrants, to remain in the United States and work legally, basically allowing non-citizens, criminal aliens to continue to stay in the U.S., get American jobs, and work, all in the name of, I don't know, allowing them to stay endlessly, I guess. And this includes ending for the TPS, the temporary protected status, for a total of 600,000 Venezuelans and 500,000 Haitians who were granted protection under President Joe Biden, which they did last minute to keep them in the country when they knew Donald Trump was going to get reelected. TPS, the Associated Press writes, is granted in 18-month increments. Well, who the hell cares? The bottom line is the President of the United States has the right to say, change my freaking mind. And that's what's happening here. And make no mistake, again, and I'm going to say this once again, the purpose for this, the reason why the Democrat Party is fighting tooth and nail to keep these a-hole aliens in the country is because they are looking at a permanent underclass, not just short term where they get to work for lower wages, but also because the inevitable amnesty that the Democrat Party will inflict on the American people. You're looking at permanent power. You see, amnesty was already granted once before, 1986, under the Simpson-Mazzoli Act, or the Immigration and Reform Control Act, with Tip O'Neill, the Democrat leader, and Ronald Reagan. They made a deal. One-time amnesty, and they would then build a wall. Well, the Democrat Party, by the early 90s, defunded the wall and left the borders open. The reason is there were 2.7 million people back in 86 who were granted amnesty. Roughly half lived in California. The illegal population votes overwhelmingly Democrat. The reason is most people that come here illegally do so because they are of lower socioeconomic class and they tend to need government assistance. People that need government assistance tend to vote for the party that gives them the most stuff, the party that plays Santa Claus the most, and that happens to be the Democrat Party. 70% voted Democrat. California, like that, flipped blue. And to kind of give you context, California had voted Republican in every presidential election for 30 years before amnesty 1986, from the 1950s all the way to 1988. But never again. Why? Amnesty. The Democrat Party learned in the 80s and in the early 90s that they could import a massive new voting class, a permanent underclass, if they could just grant more amnesty. So the border was left wide open. And by the early 2000s, there were more attempts at more amnesty. But by then, the conservatives within the Republican Party had wisened up. You had the likes of Rush Limbaugh crusading to stop amnesty from happening under the George W. Bush era. They were able to stop it. But there have been a total of 9 attempts at amnesty since 2000. The most recent was 2021 under Joe Biden. So understand that all of this is nonsense trying to distract you from the real danger here, which is a permanent shift in power. Because you've got roughly about 25 to 30 million of these infestors inside the country. And if granted amnesty, you're talking about a permanent shift in power for at least a generation. And if you think after amnesty, then they will close the border, think again. They'll want to, in perpetuity, bring in by the tens of millions more people until actual Americans are overwhelmed and simply overridden by a new voter class, by new populations, and America will cease to exist as founded. So this is what is at stake. The Democrat Party has ripped the mask off, and they are hell-bent at doing this. And these corrupt judges, these political activists wearing black robes pretending to be judges, well, they're in on this game as well. But the Supreme Court says, go pound sand. And so in May, the Supreme Court reversed a preliminary order from Chen that affected another three. So they've already, so it's the same freaking judge. They've already overturned him once before, and now it's another group of 300 to 350,000. This is where you need judges to be disbarred for political activism. It is a clear and present danger, and these judges are clearly not acting like judges, at least not in the sense of what we were taught to expect the judges were supposed to be when we were kids. So the Supreme Court had already reversed another order from Chen that affected 350,000 Venezuelans whose protections expired back in April. The High Court provided no explanation at the time. Why should they? Because it's obvious the president has the right to do this, and these a-hole judges should not have stopped it, which is common in emergency appeals. The same result that we reached in May is appropriate here, the court wrote Friday in an unsigned order. So migrants have lost their jobs and homes, while others have been detained and deported after the justices stepped in the first time, lawyers for the migrants told the court. Meanwhile, political activist, supposed Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown, who has no business being a Supreme Court Justice, by the way, she is a DEI installed justice, said, I view today's decision as yet another grave misuse of our emergency docket. Because respectfully, I cannot abide our repeated, gratuitous, and harmful interference with cases pending in the lower courts while lives hang in the balance. I dissent. You're the frickin' Supreme Court. The fuck are you talking about? She's such a dumb idiot. She's got the IQ of a butterfly, and people actually have to take her seriously because she is a black-robed Supreme Court justice. Now, Congress created the TPS back in 1990 to prevent deportations to countries suffering from natural disasters, civil strife, or other dangerous conditions, which is a stupid thing that we did. We never, ever, ever should have done this. It is not our responsibility to take care of other people and bring them in by the hundreds of thousands or millions into our country because, oh no, their country is suffering some sort of disaster or civil strife. I'm sorry. It is not our responsibility. We should not be playing world police. If we want to go fight a freaking war in their country to end whatever civil strife or natural disasters, fine. But bringing them here is retarded, and it serves only one purpose, and that is to keep them here permanently, or at least a large chunk of them. We've seen this for the last 25 years. Every time this happens, they just stay in perpetuity. Now, Chen found that the Department of Homeland Security acted with unprecedented haste in an unprecedented manner because there's 25 to 30 million people who need deportation out the hell out this country. They've been festering for years. The Democrat Party is trying to turn them into citizens by fiat. They have limited time to get it done. This judge knows that, but Orange Man bad, and more importantly, he's got to protect the party. He's got to help them get permanent power, so a new dystopian nightmare can emerge. Now, Chen, in earlier denying the Trump administration's emergency appeal, Judge Kim Wardlaw wrote for a unanimous 3-judge appellate panel from the leftist judges that Chen determined that the Department of Homeland Security made its decision first and searched for a valid basis for those decisions second. You don't need a reason. They don't belong here. We can end it at any time. The whole thing is ridiculous. It's absurd. And of course, it's nothing but judicial activism. It's designed to basically delay until Trump is out of office, and you can hopefully get your amnesty in after the fact. Now, Solicitor General John Sauer, the administration's top Supreme Court lawyer, argued in the new court filing that the justices' May order should also apply to the current case. He said this case is familiar to the court and involves the increasingly familiar and untenable phenomenon of lower courts disregarding this court's orders on the emergency docket. And the result, he said, is that the new order, just like the old one, halted the vacatur and determination of TPS affecting over 300,000 aliens based on meritless legal theories. The bottom line is every last one of these people needs to be removed, and they need to be removed quickly and efficiently. There are tens of millions more to go. Our judicial system has been set up to keep them here. And the Democrat Party is complicit. They constantly are doing everything that they can to keep these people in the country, because the goal is to inevitably overtake the country's political system, corrupt it, and then destroy it by simply bringing in millions upon millions upon millions of people who have no allegiance, no love, no loyalty to this country. That is the bottom line. So good for the Supreme Court for doing the right thing. Let's hope that trend continues.